Hi, I'm Annie Sleece, and I'm on the staff at NAMI Delaware. Today is the second part of a three-part series in recognition of National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. Our guest today is Chantelle Bratcher Coleman. But before we invite her to join us, I'd like to tell you a little bit about NAMI Delaware and some of the programs that we have coming up. First of all, NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we are located in Delaware. There is a NAMI in every state, and if you are tuning in right now from a different state, you can find your local NAMI by visiting the national website, NAMI, NAMI.org. So NAMI Delaware does operate independently, and as every state organization does, and with that, we try to serve our own communities and within the capacity that we have and the needs that we see. So with NAMI Delaware, we have some really remarkable programs that we're still operating given the current situation with the pandemic. We've changed them, we've made them virtual. But we do offer a variety of different things. So let me tell you about a couple. We have Family Support Group, which is an opportunity for family and loved ones who support someone living with a mental illness to get together and discuss how that's going. And they meet with people who are trained facilitators with lived experience as family members, um, and talk about their experience in a safe place. So that actually is meeting tonight. And you can learn more about that by visiting our website. We do ask you to register so that you can receive a private link, and it's offered on Zoom. We also have a support group for peers as well. So, just in the same way that the facilitators for Family Support Group operate, our peer support group operates with people who have mental illness and they are living in recovery, and they've been trained to facilitate a support group for other peers. So it's another very safe space and a good opportunity for people to reach out and get connected. We have other programs and we have other presentations. In fact, we have the third part of this Facebook Live series coming up on Wednesday, and that will be with Vanessa Rodriguez of Delaware Family Voices, and that will be at 1 p.m. And then on Thursday of this week, we have our community conversations called Sharing Hope. And those are monthly meetings that are hosted by a fabulous moderator, Nimade Bewu. And she is going to be meeting, she has experts every month. And so her session this month is on gun violence, trauma, and minority mental health. And she will have 3 experts meeting with her. And it, again, is a safe space on Zoom where you register and receive your Zoom link privately, and you can tune in and connect on Zoom. And one more thing we have coming up that I actually have a show and tell for is we have a book club. And this is our first title. It's called Don't Call Me Crazy, 33 Voices starting the conversation about mental health. And it is edited by Kelly Jensen. Our volunteer of the year from 2019, Sue Mulhern, will be helping facilitate this exciting opportunity. And it will be a monthly meeting. The first one will be August 18th. All of these opportunities can be found on our website, namidelaware.org, as well as our Facebook page. So, a couple more things I want to cover before we invite Chantelle in. First of all, remember, this is an opportunity to hear more about mental health conversations and to hear more about supports and services. But in hearing these conversations, you may feel strong feelings, and we want to make sure that you feel supported. So there are a couple of opportunities for you to reach out and get immediate assistance should you need it. You'll see along the bottom of the screen, we have the Delaware Hope Line, which is a local support opportunity. You can either call the phone number or you can text DE Hope to 55753. And then nationally, there is a crisis text line we'd like to make you aware of. You can text HOME to 741-741, and you can be connected to someone that way. So we want to make sure that you feel supported at this time. Last but not least, As we have our conversation today, please jump in and ask questions or make comments, and we will address them as we go. And certainly make sure that you feel a part of the conversation, because this is certainly an opportunity for us all to learn more and share more. So, with that, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Chantelle Bratcher Coleman.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for being with us. So I'm going to share your part of your bio with everyone, but then
Okay.
I want you to kind of help flesh it out. Okay.
Sounds good.
So first of all, everyone, this is Chantelle Bratcher Coleman. She is the lead licensed therapist and CEO of Shaping Minds Therapeutic Services, and it's located on Main Street in Newark. She's a graduate of University of Delaware and Springfield College with over 15 years experience in the mental health field. And she serves as an adjunct professor for Springfield College in the mental health counseling master's program, as well as serving in her private practice. Now, you have a couple of other things to share, though, or at least one big news, which is a podcast, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Can you tell us
So
about that?
sure. So what happened is I was invited on as a guest
Okay.
to cmpradio .net, and they were asking me questions about mental health and saying how they wanted to bring more awareness to the Black community. And once we had that conversation on another show, a Drink Like a Lady podcast, they asked me to work with them to be able to start a podcast of our own that focuses on mental health. So we've been doing it since about April, every Thursday from 7 to 9. It's on Facebook page cmpradio.net, and
Okay.
we pick different topics. So sometimes there'll be topics that are really popular that week. So we might kind of just hone in on some of the things that are going on nationwide. And then other times we have some topics that are pretty much laid out, and we'll have special guests on, other therapists, people in different fields that relate to these topics. But it's been really nice. It's been really nice, and we have fun. We try to make it fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I want to thank Wesley. Wesley's on our tech side of this, and he's just shared the information that you shared about your podcast. It's called Gems to Shape the Mind.
Yes, gems to.
And you can reach that on cmpradio.net on Facebook. That
Yes.
sounds like really fun. So can you do that from home, or do you go to a studio, or how does that work?
So I could do it from home, but for me, it's kind of like getting out the house, especially with the pandemic. So it gives me an opportunity to actually go to the station and sit with the engineer, John Pierre. So him and I, we do it together, and it's been really nice. It's really nice to even get out the house, because for therapy we're working from home too. And
Yeah.
it's like, so I'll go into my office or I'll go to the radio station. So at least I'm able to get out during the week.
Right, right. We're all working from home too, and it does feel weird. We went into the office last week for the first time in several months, and it was strange. It
It is.
just it felt strange, and we're all experiencing such odd things right now. It's
Right.
really good that you have an opportunity to talk about them. And you say it's every week?
It's every week. So
Okay.
sometimes we'll skip a week if there's a lot of things going on in the
Uh-huh.
community that week, but it's every week, and like I said, it's usually 7 to 9. Depending on the topic, we might go over, because some topics we've been doing relationship topics, and that seems to draw up a lot of conversation here lately.
Uh-huh. I can see that. I can see that.
So it might
Definitely.
go
That
over.
sounds
So
great.
yeah.
That sounds great. So you also mentioned, you and I talked beforehand, some of the things that you cover in your treatment. I do want to cover these topics just in general, the way that you shared, so that people know what your practice includes, and then we can, sort of hash it out as we had planned, and also respond to any comments. And by the way, those of you who are tuning in, please jump in and ask questions as we go. So your practice addresses a variety of needs: trauma, addiction, severe and persistent mental illness, developmental disabilities, anxiety, and depression, just to name a few.
Mhm.
And you serve young children all the way through older adults, as well as couples and families.
Yes.
So it's a very um, broad group to serve, which is very, very helpful. Now, is has anything changed during the pandemic as far as your practice? You said you're doing it from home, but Is it like telehealth?
So it
Doing
is telehealth.
Mhm.
I actually, when I we've expanded. What happened is
Okay.
it started out as my mother and I, and my husband had agreed to come on to work with us as well. And what we're in the process of doing now, because the need is so great, is we've expanded from a 2 office setting to now we have, I believe we have 8 offices and a
Wow.
conference room, because
Wow.
because the need is so great. And then, like you said, we see children all the way up to older adults. And I do that because for me, I need the variety.
Mhm.
I don't always want to just sit and talk to adults. I don't always
Mhm.
want to sit and talk to couples. Like, I need to mix it up a little bit, because the
Sure.
kids kind of give you a little relief sometimes.
Mhm.
The babies. So but so yeah, so we're expanding. We are focusing on primarily the Black community, but we're open to servicing whoever needs help. But
That's great.
our plan is to bring in, I think at this time, we're bringing in about 5 other Black clinicians,
That's
3 of which
fantastic.
are males, because
Oh,
it's
that's great.
it's hard to find a Black male therapist in Delaware. Sometimes it takes a while to find someone.
Right, right. And it's so great that you're doing the podcast. Maybe you're getting more reach that way, right? I
I
mean,
hope so. I hope so.
yeah, I would think, and this is a conversation we need to be having. These are conversations we need to have more of.
We do.
And this, as you know, this is like the second of 3 conversations NAMI Delaware is hosting. And the first one, we were talking about equity and community, and we actually talked about the word minority and
Okay.
what that might imply, right?
Mhm.
But today we're going to talk, like you said, about more about the mental health services for the Black community and focus on the kind of some of the topics that you mentioned that you do. But first, I feel like we need to just kind of address the general term of cultural competence. Like,
Right.
what does that mean in the lens of mental health, and why is it so important for those people who are tuning in? Maybe you've never heard of it, maybe you've heard, but you're not quite sure. So,
Right.
what could we talk about with that?
I think what's important when it comes to cultural competence is, especially when you're in the helping field. I think a lot of us, we have good intentions. A lot of us, we took on these jobs because we want to help people. We come from the heart, like we really want to do the right thing by people. But I think sometimes people need to realize what their limitations are, and see, with cultural
Mhm.
competence, a lot of times we think we know a certain culture, but we're not really educated on it. So I think the most important thing about um, dealing with cultural competence is really knowing your limitations, because
Mhm.
especially now with so much going on in the world, if someone is referred to you and you really don't have the background to help that person based on their background, whatever it may be, um, you need to either educate yourself. You need to be honest with yourself first, and then with the client, to say, I'm not really aware of your culture, but I'll do the work to work
Mhm.
with you. And I think a lot of times with cultural competence, we take a class or two in school, and we're like, oh yeah, we're good. I got it. I'm culturally competent. I
I
can
got
work
it
with it.
down.
Right, right. I know this
One,
stuff,
two
right?
classes. That's all I needed.
Right, right. And then you get in front of a client and you're like, well, that you don't really know what you're doing with that client. But sometimes I think we have to be a little bit more honest with our clients to say, these are my limitations. If this is okay, we can still work together. But if it's not okay, let me find you someone that's a better fit. And
Right.
and that's hard to do as a professional, because
Oh,
we like
yeah.
to think that we're experienced, like we're the best of the best, and to have to admit that you are not able to do something, sometimes it's hard for us to even do. But it's important, because we want to make sure that people are getting the help they need.
Yeah, you're saying so many important things and so many ideas that people might not even realize are a part of this. And I'm thinking, like, can it be viewed in the reverse? Like, as someone who's seeking treatment, should they be looking for any certain qualities, or is there a way that they can kind of like address the issue of cultural competence with a potential therapist? I mean, obviously they're not, having an interview with them per se, but is there something that people could be looking for or asking about that might help them feel more trustworthy in that way with a potential
Sure.
therapist?
Sure, I definitely think so. I think, when you're looking for a therapist, a lot of recommendations I see through Facebook and things like that. I think that's helpful when you go to your network because they
Mhm.
know you. So
Yeah.
when they're sending you to someone, they already have an idea of who you are and what might be a good fit for you. But when you're looking for a therapist and you might call your insurance company or um, maybe you're going through the assistance program at your job or something like that, employee assistance. When you're looking for a therapist, you need to let them know what you want.
Mhm.
Sometimes people are like, I only want females, or I only want a male therapist, or I want someone that LGBTQ plus. Like when you know for sure that you're comfortable with a certain type of therapist, you should be asking for that. And I think sometimes when people are a lot of times people wait until they're desperate to get help,
Mhm. Yeah.
and they're kind of like, whoever you send me to, as long as they take my insurance, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
But it's not always a good fit.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier about an interview. Your first appointment with your therapist kind of is an interview.
Yeah.
It's kind of like with my clients, I don't usually just jump into the issues during the first session. The first session is, what do you know about therapy? What questions do you have? And what are you looking for in a therapist? Because if I'm going to tell you the darkest and the most emotional part of me, I need to be comfortable to have that conversation. And some people aren't comfortable with the person that has been chosen for them,
Right.
and they're not going to open up, and it's not going to be as useful. So you really do, you have to ask questions, kind of get your list together before you even call, and ask specifically for what you want, and at least see what's available to you.
Would it be fair to say, and I think you address a really important point by saying if people wait too long, then they're
Mhm.
more likely to feel pressed to just take whomever. But
Yeah.
if people are thinking, wow, I really could use somebody to talk to, I really could use this. Now would be the time, right? To start kind of shopping around, right?
Right.
Yeah. So given that like consideration as far as cultural competence, I think that's a good place to start. And you had shared with me prior to this that some of the services that you offer are specific to certain demographics. And one is a particular demographic that I think is sometimes resistant to mental health treatment. And that would be Black men.
Yes.
You had shared that you want to talk about that, and I feel like that's such an important aspect of this. And you actually even addressed the fact that there aren't very many Black male um, therapists, right? So
Right.
is that maybe a piece of it, do you think?
I think that's a piece. I think it's a small piece of it.
Okay.
I think that I find that a lot of Black men that finally make the decision to go to therapy feel like they would be more comfortable with a Black male therapist, which is
Mhm.
understandable.
Sure.
Um, and the thing is, like, everybody's, but still when it comes to fit, everybody's still not a good fit. You want to be able to have choices, and I think that
Right.
in the private practice setting, sometimes you don't really have much choice. So it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, a Black male therapist isn't available, let me go to a Black female. And that's usually what happens when I get Black male clients, is
Mhm.
they've looked around and they can't quite find the Black male therapist that they want. Or I'll have mothers that have teenage boys,
Mhm.
and they're like, well, I would really like my son to have a strong Black male therapist that can kind of, maybe they're acting out a little bit, and it's like, I want someone to just, that they can relate to.
Sure.
And if that's not available to them, then it's kind of like, well, we'll take, whatever is available. And so that's the reason for when we talked about expanding, I said, wow, I said, we really need to have a place where we have choices. I don't, I love for my husband to come on board, but my husband might not be the fit for every
Right.
person looking. And for a lot of Black men to come to therapy, they don't, they see it as, I guess some men see it as like a weakness to have to go outside of themselves to find help. Like,
Okay.
like because they there's this persona that they're strong and that they can handle anything, and the reality is we go through life, we have problems, and it doesn't matter who you are. Sometimes it's just too much, and you need a professional. And so a lot of Black men, it's like the ones that come into my office is I'm like, this is strength, for anyone that's seeking
That's
service.
it.
Like, for you to be able to admit that I don't have this on my own, I need some assistance, I need some guidance, and to have to go to another person, that is strength.
Yeah,
Because
that's a really good point.
alternative is you're trying to figure it out on your own. It's affecting your mental health, your physical health, and your family.
Yeah, your
And
relationships, sure.
right, and a lot of times it's like you can't be snappy at work because you have stuff going on at home. You can't be snappy at home because stuff is going on at work. And it's like there's people that are willing to help you, that want to help you, but sometimes they just don't know where to start.
Right. Do you think when you see teenagers, do you think that with serving young people today, is there any shift? Do you see any shift in more openness to talk about mental health issues? Or I don't know. I mean, if you've seen that over time.
I think there is a shift, but I
Mhm.
think what it is, I don't see that the teenagers are as excited about therapy. Like, that hasn't changed. Most of the teenagers come to me, it's like, my parents are making me do this.
Mhm.
I don't want to be here.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
hasn't changed over the years. But what
Mhm.
I see even with my own teenagers at home is that when it comes to mental health, they are having these conversations. They might not be having them with parents,
Right.
but amongst themselves and social media and those kind of things,
Right.
I don't think that stigma, like a lot of times with the younger generation, all the stigmas we had when we were younger, like
Mhm.
these kids are pretty open.
They're over it. Yeah.
They talk about stuff. There's nothing that they're really scared to address.
Yep.
And mental illness is something that a lot of them, like, they understand it, and they're willing to help each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that we do with NAMI Delaware, we offer education programs, and one that we just started giving, or I was actually lucky enough to be part of a pilot program of, is teen mental health first aid, so that
Right.
teenagers learn the tools to help themselves and to recognize warning signs in themselves, but more specifically, to recognize them in their peers.
I
Because,
like
like you
that.
said, they might not be having those conversations with their parents,
Right.
but
But
they
they
might
talk to
have
each
them with
other.
their friends. Yes,
They
that's
do.
right.
They do.
Yeah, so
And
I'd
that's
love
great.
to see more. And I just saw, I just saw my co-presenter Christina McBarry just jumped in on the comments and said, "End
Oh
stigma,
yeah.
and our children are leading the way." That's right.
I
Yeah,
know
Chris
these
McBarry and
kids
I
are
taught that class.
fearless. Like,
They
these
are.
kids, they are not like us, where we would be hesitant to be
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm not sure how that's going to
That's right.
work
I don't
out.
want to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
No.
like, nope, like, we're going to do it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, oh well, we're on to the next thing.
Yeah, which gives us hope, doesn't it?
It does. We need
Yeah.
it. We
Yeah,
need it.
we do. We do. So is there anything more around that first topic of serving Black men that you want to cover or that you want to address before we move on? Because I do have a couple other things I wanted to ask you about.
Sure. I mean, I guess the most important thing is to, if you're not sure about therapy, you have questions, ask around, ask some people in your community, before, if you're not really ready for therapy. That was the point of the podcast. So we created the podcast not really to push people into therapy, but we know that there's a large group of people that will not go to therapy, but they'll at least get some information from us.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that was why we pushed it. But there's a lot of good podcasts out here. If you're someone that doesn't really want to do the therapy thing, that's fine. But find a podcast, find a book, find
Hmm.
someone that is giving you education, not just their thoughts, but actually giving you
Right.
research and education on topics of mental health, and get your information that way if you need to.
That's a great point. Yeah, everyone's going to address it a different direction, but just address it somehow.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
it.
address it somehow. Thank you, Chris McBarry, for saying you're awesome. She said teen mental health first aid has been game changing, and we need an understanding as adults to help them through the process, guiding them
Yes,
and giving them tools.
we do.
Absolutely.
We do.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to roll that out more um, in the future for sure. As far as more topics, I've got like a gnat. I don't think I've ever had a gnat on Facebook Live, but I literally do. I don't know why. Um, So one of the things that you're talking about in your treatment is trauma and then vicarious trauma. And I
Yes.
feel like those are terms, certainly I would suspect that people tuning in know the term trauma. But
Right.
what about vicarious trauma? Can you talk about that a little bit and how treatment might look for someone who might be experiencing symptoms from vicarious traumatic stress of some sort?
Sure. So like you said, I think a lot of people understand. Well, a lot of people have a good understanding of what trauma is. When you go through something that basically is life changing, something that you can't forget. I
Mm-hmm.
think people don't realize that traumatic situations, they don't have to be extreme. Trauma. I could. It could be as serious as I've experienced someone being killed to I had a relationship that didn't work out and that was traumatic. Like
Mm-hmm.
trauma is it's so widespread that a lot of people don't realize that something might have been traumatic for them. And with the vicarious trauma, I was in a training. I didn't even know what it was. And I think I had been in the field for at least 10 years before I had
Wow.
a training. And when it came up, I'm like, well, it was a group of therapists. We're like, what is that? And what it is, especially now it's important because with so much going on with the pandemic, there's so many people that are in the helping
Mm-hmm.
profession that are being impacted by working with others that may be sick or others that are having more issues, and they forget that like that affects you. Everything that we do on a day-to-day basis has an effect on us. And when you're dealing with people that are not in a good place, that energy can also affect you. So,
Right.
with vicarious trauma, it's basically that you are also experiencing trauma by helping others
Right.
with their trauma, with their situations, with their life changing events and things like that. And it affects you. It has a impact on you.
So it's not something to be ashamed of
No,
if
no.
you're feeling bad. I mean, frankly, that's when I first saw a therapist, was really as the caregiver. Like I
Mhm.
didn't realize that that was what I was doing, but unpacking it over the years and looking back, that was what I was doing. I was
Right,
experiencing vicarious trauma of caring for a young
for someone.
person and what that a series of traumatic events did to us as a family and to
Right,
me. I
right,
think people um, may need to be reminded, I think, that it's okay. And like you said earlier, it takes courage to ask for help in any setting for
right,
whatever reason, right? So
right.
vicarious trauma is real.
It is real. It
And I
is.
think some of us try to, fight through it and say, oh, we got this. We have to be strong for that other person. We don't have time to sit and to take care of ourselves, or we don't have time to see to our needs. We need to help this other person.
Right. And the
But
and the,
if
re- the reality is, when you're impacted to the point that you can't function,
yeah,
you're still no good to the people that you want to
that's it.
help
You're
because
not doing anything for anybody.
right. And it shows up. Sometimes it,
Mhm.
it shows up in ways that a lot of people don't realize. You start to have stomach aches, you have headaches, you have, your chest
Right.
is tight, and things like that. That's why it's important when you're a caregiver, when you're a therapist, when you're doctors, nurses,
Yeah.
techs, just people who help other people in general. It's good to have those, there's a lot of groups on social
Mhm.
media, a lot of groups on Facebook where you can find people that are like you, that understand your field, that you can just vent to. I'm,
Right.
I'm a part of several, I think I'm a part of at least 5 clinician groups,
Okay.
where certain topics, like people will post stuff and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I know exactly what they're talking about. And, especially with COVID, like a lot of us, our anxiety has been
Mhm.
high
Sure.
because when you're taking on other people's concerns and you're responsible for helping them feel better, well,
Mhm.
you want to make sure you don't mess up either, and that's a
Right.
lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure on us too. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure that you're in a good place so that you can then be in a good place for other people.
That's right. That's right. So, Wesley just popped up thing in our comments here about what vicarious trauma is. So if people would like to
you.
learn more about vicarious trauma, that's certainly available in our comments. And then also Chris Mackberry said, why we need to have a focus on our self-care. You can't spill from an empty cup.
Right.
Modeling self-care is riddled with stigma as well, and we all can be better.
Yes, and as
Yeah.
therapists, I think we are probably the worst when it comes to we forget.
Yeah.
We forget.
Well,
We
you're
forget.
in the helping field, and you forget that you have to help yourself first,
Right,
right?
right. We do.
Yeah.
But we can all do better to do self-care. A lot of people feel like it's selfish. Like if I put myself first, that's selfish. It's like, no, if you don't put yourself first, that's selfish, because then you're going to be in a place eventually that you can't help anyone.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You can't be helpful at all if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right.
So important, that self-care piece. All right. Well, we're coming up on time, but I want to cover one more quick thing.
Sure.
We've sort of already talked about some access to treatment conversations, but what about addiction, especially now during this pandemic? Are you seeing any upticks in needs around that, or people turning to substances or turning to other, negative coping strategies to get by?
Well, I haven't really seen in my practice, I haven't really seen an increase of clients coming in with addiction any more than usual.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that for people that are in families that have people that are in addiction, like, you really do have to pay attention,
Okay.
because this pandemic has really took a toll on a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of people, I think, out there that might have been trying to get help before it started and were kind of in a good place. And then this happened, and it kind of turned all of our worlds upside down. And, a lot of times when it comes to addiction, coping is one of the lead issues in what lead people to addiction. And if your coping skills aren't good,
Mm-hmm.
then you're quickly going to go and pick up that substance and do those things. So it's really important for us as family members, when you suspect that something is off, or that someone has an addiction, to really check in with them and get them the help they need.
Right.
It's not a thing that you want to take it on by yourself. Like,
Yes.
this is a situation that you definitely want to make sure that you have professional help. You have you find out what groups are available. Like, I know with AA and NA, they're doing these things virtual now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, you definitely want to make sure that you're just providing people with information, finding out what resources are available, and that kind of thing.
Right. And really, with addiction, when we know that when we're reaching out to a loved one who might maybe to us appear like they need some help, but they might not be ready for that help.
Right.
We need to help ourselves too, and we need to inform for us. We need to find information for us, because they might not be ready, right? And that's such a struggle, such a struggle.
Yes. Yes.
But is that something that you could help with, though? Is that something that a client could turn to you in and say, I have this loved one and they won't get help, and I need your help because I can't get them help, right? That's a thing.
Right. That's definitely a conversation to be had. I've even since January, I had a few churches that had reached out, and that was one of the topics that we discussed in a virtual setting, and we just talked about addiction and enabling. Because a lot of times it's quick. It's easy for us to talk about the person that is in the addiction, but when we have to admit that they're in an addiction and we are kind of not supporting them getting better, that there's some things that we need to change. And there's a lot of information out there on people that are dealing with family members in addiction. You just have to do the research. On YouTube, they have TED Talks. TED Talks are great.
Mm-hmm.
There's pretty much any topic that you can think of, there's a TED Talk about it. But to even ask in your community, if you're a part of a church, to ask your church family to assist. But you have to really get your resources together and have places that you can get that support.
Absolutely. And I'll jump in and say that our helpline certainly has resources available that people could call, and we could help connect people. And that's the kind of
Yes.
work that we do to try to, we don't serve all those different needs. We don't actually provide anything specific to addiction, but we do have partners who do. And
Yes.
that's what that community partnership looks like, right? And
Right.
working with partners like you,
Yep.
practitioners who are helping so many people in our state, especially now with such difficult challenges that we're all facing. We're so grateful to call you our partner, Chantelle.
Listen, I get excited because you guys are really tackling the topics that people want to know the information, but people don't know where to go to get it. So
Right.
it's really nice to have these platforms
Yeah.
and really inform people on things. A lot of people, they don't know what they don't know.
Right. Well,
And
right. That's
this
one of the
helps.
NAMI mantras is you don't know what you can't know what people didn't tell you.
Right.
So we want to be those people. We want to inform, and just got a nice thank you on the comments. Thank you, ladies. Keep leading the way. And thank you, Chantelle, for joining us. And I think we have so much to talk about yet. So we should do another Facebook Live. I don't know
Oh,
about
I'm
you,
up
but
for it.
I think we should do it. I know you're
Yeah.
doing podcasts, and I don't want to take up your calendar
No,
too much, but
no.
let's circle
This is
back
easy.
and do this
The
again.
virtual makes it so easy, right? I don't have to leave home. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
works.
you're an expert, and you're so delightful to talk to. This has been
Thank
so
you.
easy. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and certainly check back in with us again. And Chantelle, again, thank you very much. Shaping Minds Therapy. Check in with her and find
guys.
out how you can help yourself and others. Take
Yes.
care, everybody.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye.